All right, good morning, everybody. Hope everyone can hear me. All right, so today is Daf Lamed Aleph in the Maseches Pesachim. So we left off by the bottom Mishnah. So the Mishnah says, Nochri shehilves Yisrael hachamso achar Pesach muter b'hana. So we're going to have two statements, two opposite cases in the Mishnah. The first case is a Nochri, which I will use the word Nochri. I will not say Gentile or non-Jew or guy or anything. Just Nochri, and that means a person who's not Jewish, who there is no Isra Hana for them to own Chametz on Pesach. So Nochri is that loans a Jew al Chemso. So the Yisrael is borrowing money, and he doesn't have money. So he basically uses his Chametz as collateral. Okay, so he uses his chametz on collateral. So if he doesn't pay back the loan, the collateral becomes that of the nachri. So we say there nachri shehil so achar pesach muter b'hana. It's muter b'hana because he doesn't pay him back, and therefore it's acquired by the nachri. And since it was owned by the nachri over Pesach, it's muter b'hana. And the opposite case of Yisrael shehil nachri al chem. So if you have a case of Yisrael who goes ahead and he lends a nachri, and the nachri uses his chametz as collateral, and the nachri doesn't pay back, and therefore the chametz becomes that of the Jews. Achar Pesach, it's asabana. He doesn't pay him back afterwards. Basically, retroactively, that chametz was owned by the Yisrael on Pesach, and therefore it becomes asar bahana. So that was the Mishnah. Two opposite cases, and using the same logic. Now, so Zak the Gemara. So itmar bal choiv. When it comes to a bal chov, a creditor. The Rav Amar Mikan L'Abba Hu Goyve. It's a machlokes. If someone lends money and something is used as collateral, so the question, and the guy doesn't pay, so they take the collateral, they seize it, in lieu of payment. So the question is now, when does the person acquire it? Right? Does he acquire it at a time when the loan was made, or does he acquire it at the time of default? Right? Obviously, the big nafkamina would be, right? Let's say something happened to the property in the middle. Right? So, was that before the creditor? Is it from the time of the loan, or was it the time of the default? So, Abaye says it's from the time of the loan, right? It goes back to day one, right? January 1st, that was the day of the loan. And the Rav Omar Mekan L'Abba, right? The June 1st, right? 5 months later, right, was when the guy couldn't pay, and therefore it becomes only the collateral becomes the lenders at this point in time. Now, Mar points out, if it's a case where, let's say on January 1st, he took the loan, and in February, he goes ahead and he's makdish this land, right? The land was supposed to be a collateral for the loan in case he didn't pay it back. And he says, oh, I'm going to, I'm giving this to hektish, or I'm going to go ahead and sell it to somebody else's piece of land. Everyone agrees that the lender can go back on January 1st, right, or the lender from January 1st, and that guy can go ahead and seize the land, whether it's from hektish or from hektish or from the buyer who bought it. In the meanwhile, everyone can take it, the Yossi Malva Uparik, and he can go ahead and either buy it, take it back, or even go ahead and redeem it. It's not we learn in Mishnah. Right, he can go ahead and he can redeem the property, even if it's made hektish. He can go ahead and redeem it for a small amount. And as we just wanted to redeem it with something, even though really the mice, he can take it back for free. Just redeem it so people don't think that you're taking something away from hektish for nothing. So redeem it for $1, and then go ahead and re-seize it. But everyone agrees you can seize it. So what's the machlokes? Kipligi dezav and malva, the kaddish malva. The question's like this: let's say I'm the lender, and I give someone money, and then he gives me his property. As collateral, right? And in the meantime, on February, right? Even though I'm only the lender, I'm assuming the guy's not going to pay me back when it comes to June. So I sell it now, or I mock this shit now in February before the loan is due. All right. So Abaye says, it goes retroactively. So in other words, when the guy defaults, it really was mine from day one. And came about this man of loy pare. I'm afraid the mikar b'shusay havikai the shaper akadish the shaper zavin. And therefore, when it comes out, the guy doesn't pay right on June 1st. It turns out that January 1st it was mine, and therefore that which I sold it during February was a good sale or was a good case of hektish. The Rav Omar Mikan L'Abba Hu Goyve. And Rav says no. He says, no, you can only go ahead, and since June 1st came and you didn't pay me June 1st, only then do I go ahead and control it, and only from there now on I can go ahead and sell it to whoever I want, or I can be makdish it. Now, kevan di'ilu, why? What's the reason? Kevan di'ilu havile zavi hayim masalike bezuze yishech dahashte kakan. So as far as like this, according to Rava, that since Lamais, if the guy had money on June 1st, when the 5-month loan was due, he could have paid me, but he didn't pay me, right? So since he could have paid me at that point in time, and he didn't pay me, it turns out only from that point in time, that's when I acquired, right? I only acquired from the time that he doesn't pay. When he doesn't pay June 1st, that's when I acquired the property. So that was Rava's svara. Now we come to a complicated case. Umi Omar Rava Hachi. And does Rava say this? Ruvain Shamachar Sadeh L'Shimon Bachrayis. Let's say Ruvain, all right? We'll call Ruvain in this case Bob, okay? We'll have Bob. I don't know if he's keeping the share because Bob dies in this case. I don't want to, and I'm ruining the ending. Bob dies, but we have Bob, okay? And Bob, because I see Zevi, the picture next to me, he sells a field to Zevi, okay? Now, Bachrayas, Bob gives Zevi a guarantee. I guarantee that this field will be yours. None of my creditors, I don't owe this field to anybody. It's yours. If someone tries to take it from you, I owe you that, I owe you the money for the field. However, Zevi, a shrewd businessman, does not pay him money. He says, okay, instead of giving you the money now, I'm giving you an IOU, right? Promissory note, an IOU. Umeis Ruvain. Now this case, Bob dies. The Asa Balchayv de Ruvain, the Tarif Le Mishimon. Now, let's say Dudi was owed money by Bob. So now this field that Bob sold to Zevi, right, for a promissory note, for an IOU, right? So Dudi wants to come, and he was owed money from Ruvain, right? So this field was given to Zevi. So he goes to Zevi, the Asa Shimon Pai Bezuze. And Zevi says, hey, do me a favor, right? Don't take the field. Here's the money for the field. Okay, here's the money for the field. Take the field and go get it. Now, Dinahu, Asa B'nei Reuven, Ramalo Shimon, Ana Matalta Neshavik Gabech, Matalta Diasin, the Bachol Mashtavi. They said, so now the children of Bob come to Zevi. They say, silly, I don't want to call you a dummy, but dummy, right? Why did you go ahead and give him the land, right? You could have, right? What could you have said? You didn't owe him the money, right? The problem was like this. Reuven, there's no Reuven, right? Bob, in this case, right, he had the land. So in this case, if instead of paying or giving the land to the kids, right, he could have just said, all I have Reuven's money, right? You can't go ahead and seize his money after you can only seize the land. So the creditor, Dudi, tried to go ahead and collect the credit, and therefore he took the land. But they could have said that the only thing that was owed, right, was the money that was owed. So since there was only a loan that was owed from Bob, right, or actually from Zevi to Bob, he could have said you can't seize a loan, right, and that you can't go ahead and seize money. So in other words, don't say that it was the land that was owned by the kids of Bob, right? It was only a promissory note, right? The promissory note was all that they had, right? All that they had was a promissory note from Zevi to their father saying, I owe you, the money for the field. So, and then if the creditors, if Dudi tries to go ahead and collect a promissory note from what's it called? From orphans, right? He's not allowed to do that. So therefore, you didn't have to go ahead and give him the land. You could have just said the only thing he had was the IOU note, and the IOU note is worth nothing. And therefore, since you gave him the land, right? That's on you, right? You now basically you still owe us the land because you promised. When Zevi was saying you still owe me because in this case, right? Since he chose to give them the creditor back the field, right? But the kids still have the promissory note. So in this case, right, therefore, Zevi in this case, in addition to losing the field, right, he still actually also owes the promissory note to the children of Bob. Yeah.
And that's because it was done by Achrayos. He sold it by Achrayos. Is that why it's not
right?
They can't be Torah if the field.
What? Say it again. You did.
I said he can't be Torah if the field because it was sold with Achrayos. That's what you're saying.
So in this case,
there's a promissory note, but there was a achrayus on the sale.
Right. So it actually goes back because right now it's almost funny because I'm buying it, right, but I'm not giving you anything. So the only thing I'm giving you is a promissory note, and then you're guaranteeing me that the field will never be taken from me. So in that case, so if it does get taken, you owe that back to me. So in this case, even though it was taken, right? So therefore, there's still the promissory note that's due, and so that what they're saying that you didn't have to go ahead and pay that. You should have paid it, right? You should have just said You don't have anything from the guy who died, right? From Bob. All you have from him is a promissory note. And promissory note, you shouldn't have been able to go ahead and seize. But you guys didn't choose to give him the promissory note. You chose to give him the land. That's on you, not on us. Now, what's the whole proof here? V'amar Rava, coming back to now, we're going to bring it back to our case. V'amar Rava, Ipikech Shimon, if Shimon in this case, which was Zevi, because in this case, Zevi basically lost his land and now he still owes the money, but he could have been smart about it. Ipikech Shimon, what would she have done? Magbilu Ara, he should have said, hey, you know what? I'm collecting, right? Since your father has a achrayus to me, he could have gone ahead and collected from Bob, right? Excuse me. So Magbilu Ara. So the Hadar Gabi Minayu, right? He should have had, right? In other words, now Zevi owed the kids the promissory note, right, for $100,000. Okay, so he doesn't have it. So he says, you know what you could have done? Right now, take the land from me, right, as payment. So now you have the land, right? And then since you took the land from me, right, I can now collect the land from you because you sold it to me by achrayus, right? So it's one big circle. If the orphans go ahead and they collect land through the obligation of their father, right? Then the Baal Chov can go back and take it from them. So since that you guys collected the land from me, but you're only in the place of the father, so therefore I can go ahead and basically take the land back from you. Now, what's the question on Rava? If you say that according to Rava, when someone goes ahead and collects, right, it's Lamafreya who gaive. That's the reason why he can go ahead and basically seize the land back because it was from achrayus. It was from back then when their father sold it to me. Right? The command of government because it's like it happened during the time of the father. But if you say that only now when he sees it, and therefore that's when it was due, only when it was taken, how could he go ahead and re-seize the land? How could Shimon in this case, right, re-seize the land from the children? Right? It would be like any sort of Yisraelim that are now buying land. Right? So if they would buy land, would their father's Bachov be able to go ahead and collect it? They wouldn't. So obviously, right, that which Rav is saying, you can go ahead and recollect the land, it must be because it went Lamafreya, not Mikan Laba. So our answer is no, Shani Hasam over there is different, right? Right? He says, just as like that my property was owed, right, to your father, right? So too, it was owed to anybody who your father owes, which would be me, right? Because your father owes me, he gave me the guarantee, he gave me the achrayus. So therefore, I'm no different than just like, right, it was to your father. So since I was the guarantor, right? So or I was guaranteed that the asset, therefore that occurred at the same place. That occurred at the time of the loan, and Midur Rab Nassan. And this goes for the rule of Rab Nassan. The Tani we learn it right. Rab Nassan. So where do we know that if A owes B money, A owes B $100 and B owes C $100, that how do I know that that C can go directly to A and collect the money? Right? You go ahead and you see who is the guilty one, who is the one who's out. And since if A owes B and B owes C, so therefore C can go ahead and collect A. So too in this case that since that Shimon, right, that in this case that he was owed money, right? Even though he owed, right? He owed the children, but the children then back owed him. So he's allowed to go ahead and collect from himself because he was the third person. And therefore, in this case, since he was owed the money because he was given the guarantee by Reuven when he sold him the land, therefore we say in this case that he's able to go ahead and collect it, and it's not a contradiction to Rava to say Mikan Haba. Now we're going to bring this all back to why we're discussing this. Let's go bring it back to our Mishnah, right? We're talking about a Mishnah of a case of giving loans when it comes to and using the collateral was chametz. Now, Tanan, Nachri shehilves Yisrael al chametzo. Achar Pesach motabana. So Nachri, when he goes ahead and he lends Yisrael, he lends him money, and the Yisrael says, "Okay, use my chametz as the collateral," and he defaults. It says, "Okay, you can go ahead and keep the chametz." So after Pesach, it's mutter because we say the Nachri Yoda. So if you say Lamafreya, it goes retroactively to the day of the loan, which was before Pesach. So the chametz was in the rishus of the Nachri throughout the entire Pesach. So that's why it's mutter b'ana. But if you say only from the time when he defaults from the loan, which is after Pesach, that only then he should acquire it. So the chametz is really owned by the Yisrael during Pesach. Which is this? So my umat b'ana, which is the Yisrael habikai. It would be in the rishus of the Yisrael. So the answer is hachabayis kinan sheherinu etzlo. When he didn't just lend it to him on collateral, right? Rather, he gave it to him, and this basically was put in the possession, right? It was deposited in the house of the Nachri, and before, when the time of the loan. So he took the loan, let's say a week before Pesach, and he brought his chametz there, and then a month later he never paid him, right? So it turns out that the chametz the entire time was the rishus of the Nachri, and therefore, according to everybody, it was the rishus of the Nachri, and therefore it's a mutter bahana. So lemek tonight. Let's say this is a machlokes tonight. Yisrael lachar Pesach in Oiver. Yisrael who goes ahead and lends money to a Nachri and is paid on Pesach, and after Pesach, ain't over, right? He is not this he is not violated, I guess, getting hana from chametz achar Pesach. And Mishumer Rameir Amru over, and Rameir says he is over. So in other words, over here we're talking about a case of Yisrael, who lends to him. So according to the story before, right, if he deposited, right, then if the Nachri deposited his chametz with Yisrael, it would be in the possession of the Yisrael during Pesach, and therefore he would own it there. So one says he would be either he would violate by Yerah by Matzah. The other one says he's not by Yerah by Matzah. So my lab hakam ifli the mar saver l'mafreyu gaiva umar saver mekan laba gove isn't that the machlokes, right? That one says the mafreyu is not. So one says but his brother, does this make sense? So aim is sefer. Let's look at the sefer that brisa. It says over there. Ema Sefer Aval Nachri Shehilvel Yisrael Al Chamsa Leachar Pesach Divya Kol Oiver, right? But it says a Nachri who lent to Yisrael, okay, for his chametz. After Pesach, Divya Kol Oiver. Everyone says he's Oiver. What's going on here? Why? Everyone holds he's Oiver. In other words, it's still in the rishus of the Yisrael, even though that it was used as collateral for the Nachri. So how does everyone say that, right? Well, if there was a machlokes was right. If it was a simple machlokes as to, okay, whoever lends the money, right, the collateral is considered to be in his hand because it was with him or it wasn't. So it should apply the same. And in other words, this case would be the opposite. If one case is a machlokes, one says over, the other one says over. So too, the sefer, which is the opposite case, should also say the other, the one who said over in this case, right, should be the opposite. Well, it should be massive. Laman demer hasam ein over haka over. Laman demer hasam over haka ein over. It should be the opposite. Whoever said over there was in the rishus of the Yisrael. In this case, it should be the rishus of the Nachri. And whoever said in that case the rishus of the Nachri, in this case it would be in the rishus of the Yisrael, and therefore it would be over by Matzah. So my answer is Ella. Turn the page, top of Lamed Aleph, Amud Beis, Ella Hachabayis Kinan, Kegoyin Sheirinu Etzlo. We're talking about a case of where he deposited the money. Okay, he deposited the chametz. All right, so the chametz was in the rishus of the lender. Okay, so now that's a step. Okay, so it's the rishus of the lender. So l'chayra, right, what we said before, according to our Mishnah, right, even both Rav and Abaye, everyone agreed that if he deposited with someone, it should go back to Lamafreya. However, the Kamivli of Rabbi Yitzchak, they argue with that which Rabbi Yitzchak said. How do you know that a balchayv, right, acquires the mashkon? So if someone gives someone a collateral, where do we see that the lender who has the collateral, he's given the collateral, he actually owns it, right? Shinamar, as the pasuk says, and for you will be tzedakah. Over there, it's talking about to return somebody's, pajamas or evening garments or something he needs every day. So it says, give it to him. It will be like charity, tzedakah. What do you mean? If it's his, then it belongs to him. Obviously, it still belongs to the lender, or not. It belongs to the lender now, but he's allowing the borrower to go ahead and reuse it again. So therefore, you see that the lender actually acquires the collateral, right? If he didn't require, if the lender didn't require the collateral, then it wouldn't be tzedakah, right? So mikan from here, the Baal Chayv shekanav mashka. Over here, we see that the Baal Chayv does acquire a mashka. So now, let's go back to our case, the case of Chametz and Pesach. So does he acquire it or not? So Tanakama Savarhani Mil Yisrael Yisrael. That pasuk is only you're talking about when it's the Yisrael borrowing from Yisrael, and the collateral belongs now to the Yisrael. Who the Korean lay ulachati tzedakah, and therefore it says over there for you should be tzedakah by Yisrael minachi lekani. But for Yisrael, right, in order if he's taking the collateral of a nachri, then he doesn't acquire it. Ulachati tzedakah does not apply to him. All right. So according to one man domar, it doesn't apply to him. So therefore, in this case, right, if Yisrael lends money and the collateral given to the Yisrael is the chametz, right? Perhaps it's not owned by the Jew now; it's owned by the nachri. Meir Saber Kavachaymer. Rabbi says no. Fakir, it's a Kavachaymer. Yisrael, Kani Yisrael, Menachil Shkein. If you're going to say Yisrael acquires, right, the collateral of Yisrael, certainly the Yisrael should acquire the collateral of the Nachri. Therefore, in the case of when the Yisrael is the lender, okay, certainly he does acquire the Chametz and Pesach, and therefore he would violate. He would be either he would be either Bal Yimatzeh. Fine. Now, about Nachri shehilves Yisrael al chamso. But if you say a Nachri who lends Yisrael, does he acquire the chametz of the Yisrael or not? So after Pesach, right? After Pesach, Divyakol, everyone says he does violate. Why? Because Hasan Vade Nachri Yisrael Kana. Because over there, when it comes to a Nachri lending a Yisrael, there certainly he does not acquire the collateral of the Yisrael, and therefore it's still possession of the Yisrael. And everyone holds that therefore this chametz is owned by a Jew over Pesach, and therefore it should not be used. Is not permitted for Hana le'acher Pesach. Fine. Tanan. Nachri shehil. Let's look at our Mishnah. It says Nachri shehilve Yisrael al chamsa achar Pesach mutter v'hana. So a Nachri that goes ahead and lends Yisrael, and he gives his chametz as collateral. So after Pesach, it's mutter because it was owned by the Nachri over Pesach. And he nami the hirtzinu. That's like, Marta Nachri Yisrael Kani. Well, even though he deposited, I thought you said, right? Didn't we just say that a Nachri, right, does not acquire the chametz of Yisrael? So why is it mutter b'hana? We should say it remained in the possession of the Yisrael. So if he tells him, I'm giving to you mi'achshav, from now you have my chametz. So therefore it comes out that even to the Nachri it was given to him. But if he doesn't say mi'achshav, then it would only work mikan laba when it comes to the collateral of Yisrael to a Nachri. And where do we see that there's a difference of where it says mi'achshav to not say mi'achshav? The Tanya within a brisa, Nachri shir here in pas perni etzel Yisrael, right? So if you have a Nachri, right, that he gave some bread, right, for Yisrael on Pesach, right? Eino over, right? He says he's not violating Pesach, right? So he says, I'm going to give it to you, right? In this case, but it seems to be that he only acquires it after Pesach. However, v'im amar lo higiyatiyecha. But he says, basically, it's yours from now. It doesn't know. I'm not just leaving it here and then you take it later on. But if I says I'm giving to you and you own it now, then over. What's the difference in the case? One case where he says, right, this is going to be your collateral from now. That is when he acquires it from the beginning. But if he doesn't say this is your collateral from now, it just says this is the collateral, then he would only acquire it at the end when it comes to a Nachri. And finally, before we get to the Mishnah, Tanar Rabbanan, Chanus Shal Yisrael, if the store was owned by Yisrael and all the goods were also of that of Yisrael, Upalin nachrim nechnasim l'sham, and you have the workers there are nachrim. They go in and out there. Chametz shneit l'sham achar Pesach asur b'ana. Any chametz that's found on Pesach is asur b'ana because it was owned by the Yisrael. Certainly you don't have to say the achila. And however, chanus shel nachri, but if you have a case of a chanus, right, a opposite, it was a store owned by a nachri, shel nachri, and you say that the merchandise and the products of there were also owned by the nachri. Then the workers there were the Yisrael going in and out of there. So chametz shenitz l'sham achar Pesach moter b'achila. Any chametz found there is moter b'achila. You don't have to say bahana that it is considered to be certainly not only it's excuse me mutter b'achila because it was owned by the nachri, but it's also mutter bahana because it was also owned by the nachri. Fine. Naya Mishnah. Mishnah says chametz shenafla alav ma'peiles harehu k'mavur. So if you have chametz that it fell upon it, that there was a building there and it fell down, the ruins on it. Harehu k'mavur. It's like it's actually removed, it's destroyed since it's under the rubble. Therefore, it's basically considered to be gone and not owned anymore by the Solar Pesach. And so he says, no, if it can't be found by a dog, then it's not considered to be there, right? But if it's considered to be found by a dog, then it is considered to be there, and one would have to go ahead and find it to destroy it. Now, so he has to go ahead and be mevatel belibo. In other words, he has to say that not only just the rubble fell, but he has to do a bittul and say that this any chametz that I own there is basically nullified, is mevatel by me. I no longer own that, even if it's underneath the rubble. So Tana kama chipusas al kelev. So he said, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel said, as long as the kelev can't find it, how much can the dog find? The shlosh tefachim goes down 3 tefachim. It's more than 3 tefachim below the rubble. Then the dogs will be able to find it, and then therefore that's considered like it's destroyed. And Amalei Ravacha Ber Rav Yisrael Rashi Hadamar Shmuel Ksafim Elhem Shmira El Bekarka. So maybe in Shlosh Tefachim Alo. That which we say that you require 3 tefachim or not. I guess excuse me. That which we say that people is a good place to hide money. So is it to money? Considered to be a good hiding place, right? One guards money. The proper guarding is if you put it underneath the ground, right? So if does it count? So when you doing shmira and you put it in the ground, does it have to be 3 tefachim underneath the ground? Is that considered to be secure, or it could be anything underground? So when it comes to chametz, so therefore, since it can be smelled, so therefore you can smell within 3 tefachim. So therefore, we require at least 3 tefachim underneath the rubble for not to be found. However, hasam over there, when it comes to just hiding money, all you need is that it can't be seen, right? Therefore, you don't need 3 tefachim. It doesn't have to be 3 tefachim. It just has to be right hidden from the eye. The kama, and how much is that? Amarav Rafam Bar Papa Misichra Tefach. So he says Rafam Bar Papa Misichra. He says that is a tefach. As long as it's considered 1 tefach underneath the ground, that is considered to be hidden in the ground, and therefore that would be proper shmira. All right, we'll stop here at the Mishnah. Tomorrow, Mitzvah Shem, same time, we'll continue from this Mishnah. Everyone have a wonderful day.
Yeah. Enjoy, Rebbe. Rebbe, where you at?
Enjoy.